And she started laughing. And the key I bring this up is because she said, "You're the first person who's called me back to actually make me an offer. So I'm not surprised you don't know." And I said, "Well, I know where I'd like to be. I'd like to be at around 70 to 90,000. And she said, "I can't do that." And I said, "I didn't expect you to take that. But if you're willing to work with me on price, I may be able to do a little higher." And she said, "Okay, I'm willing to let you go walk the house knowing that you're going to be much lower than 130, but higher than 70 to 90. So that was kind of how I got my foot in the door. At that point, we called property management and we went and walked the property. All right, guys, welcome back to the Pursuit of Property podcast. Today, on our 101st episode, we're here to bring some intense value on some new ways to create deals in a changing climate. Today, I'm joined with co-host Cade Barrett. Cade, how's your morning going?
Dude, it's going good. I feel like now that we've hit that threshold of 100 episodes, I know we did something really, really big for our 100th episode. I know we're still really pushing that hard, with our partnership with Olive Madeira. And so, I don't know, dude, I feel kind of re-energized. It feels like kind of a rewind back to episode 1 now that we've started back at 101. So
it does.
I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Before we do that, let's plug Olive one more time. The GoFundMe link is still available. Olive Madeira is a local nonprofit. Their whole goal is to fight sex trafficking, to help the Central Valley and all of the victims in sex trafficking. So the link is on GoFundMe. Go to our Instagram profiles. You'll be able to find the link. Yep. Consider donating. Again, if you've gotten any value over the last 101 episodes. If you get value from today's episode, which I know you will, consider donating.
And shout out to everybody who has donated so far and shared it on their Instagram stories and pages. I know we've got a good amount of support from our community and past guests and listeners so far. So we appreciate you guys.
Awesome. Let's jump into it. Today, we are referencing an Instagram story I posted a while back, and it was about an options contract deal. And I got a ton of investors hitting me up saying, let's do a deal breakdown. I was a little hesitant to it because I don't feel like I'm an expert because I've only done one. But you and I talked. We felt it was the right time to share how it went, what we did, and maybe let people figure out for themselves if it's a tool they want to use.
Yeah, dude. First and foremost, before we get into the breakdown, I want to give a special shout out to our boy, Adam Abajian.
Adam.
He was the first one who had this contract typed up, who had used this contract in the past and gave freely. He was like, hey, guys, this market's changing. We're needing to, really pivot in order to keep finding success. And in our changing market, here's an options contract. Here's what it does. And here it is. So you guys can try using it in your business, and hopefully it helps you close a couple deals. So
again, your net worth is your network. If Adam had not given me this contract, told me how to do it, and told me like what an options contract works as, we wouldn't have been here. So thank you, Adam. I appreciate you. Always giving back. Okay, let's start. The lead that we used this on was from cold calling. So the reason I bring this up is because the lead that came in was not the hottest lead. It's not like this person had a destroyed property. This person was not in financial distress or emotional distress. The seller, at best, would be described as irritated. So the lead came in, and our cold caller had a conversation with her where she said she wanted $130,000. We looked at the numbers, and day one, we realized that condos in this community are selling on the higher end about $150,000. Now, this is a small 1-bedroom, 1-bath. It was like 700 or 650 square feet. And the community was somewhere I had shown before. So I knew it was okay. It was on Huntington Avenue or Huntington Boulevard down by Fresno Community Hospital. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the background on what this lead was.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, too, that we've talked about this a lot of times before, right? Especially with leads that are coming in, very rarely is a lead coming in piping hot, right off the stove, right? Where they're hitting all the pillars, the price is right, and the conversation's coming in good. So I think there is also something to be said when a lead kind of comes in like this. It's easy to kind of just brush over the lead, right? And kind of get discouraged. But that's where I think tying in this options contract and knowing how to have that conversation with the seller can help you, close on more of these leads that may seem like they're not really kind of leads right off the bat or right on the surface, right?
Yeah, sometimes we're too quick to rule out a lead that could actually be monetized. There's a couple thoughts to add to that too. This is a condo deal. Most investors don't touch condos.
Yep.
I've done a couple condos. We did one on West. Go back and listen to our flip deal from last year that we made 40-something thousand on. We've done, I think, more than 2 or 3. The thing about it is that condos get overlooked. And so if you're a newer investor, this may be an opportunity for you to have less competition, right? This seller, thinking back, she said she'd been getting calls for years and people would never call her back and make an offer. I was the first person who made her an offer.
Yeah.
And she took it. So something to consider there. Regardless, when we were looking at the lead, the background was that the seller was a little bit upset with dealing with an HOA, and that's a common complaint is HOAs. The seller was older, retired. Her family's fairly successful. Her husband's an attorney. She's retired full-time. At this point, money is not their biggest concern. Their time is their biggest concern and their headache, right? This was not a property she wanted. Just like in that West condo that we did, this was somebody who had bought the condo off of a family member, promised that they'd get paid back and never did get paid back. That was in early 2000s when this seller that we're talking about on Huntington had done this. So she's had a property she didn't want, renting it for a long time, making good cash flow, but not really wanting to deal with the headache. So fast forward to that conversation, she tells her cold caller, yeah, I'm interested in selling as is. I have a tenant who's paying. The property's in good shape. I want 130. We hear that story all the time, that the property's in good shape, the tenant's paying, and often that's not true. So we take it with a grain of salt. So I called her and had a conversation with her as our tier 2 qualification. And in that conversation, I asked about where our rents were. Were they late? Did she owe it, or did he owe any money to her? Who was living in the property? HOA costs, if her property management has been in the home. And then I asked her, is 130 really the lowest price you'll consider? And that was the question that needed to be asked. And she said, what's your price? Which is a common answer. And I said, well, frankly, I don't know. And she started laughing. And the key I bring this up is because she said, you're the first person who's called me back to actually make me an offer. So I'm not surprised you don't know. And I said, well, I know where I'd like to be. I'd like to be at around 70 to 90,000. And she said, I can't do that. And I said, I didn't expect you to take that. But if you're willing to work with me on price, I may be able to do a little higher. And she said, okay, I'm willing to let you go walk the house knowing that you're going to be much lower than 130, but higher than 70 to 90. So that was kind of how I got my foot in the door. At that point, we called property management and we went and walked the property.
Tenant occupied at that point still, right?
Yeah.
And tenant was, when you got there, tenant was friendly, tenant was cooperative, everything went smooth with going and checking out the place?
Yeah. I don't want to rush through this phase because this was kind of important, but the tenant, the landlord really liked the tenant. He'd been there for like 6 years and he'd never missed a payment.
Yeah. He's
a single guy. He lives there by himself was the story I was told. I show up, the unit with a 24-hour notice, the unit was clean. The guy was friendly. The guy was extremely open about here's what I have. There's no real damages, but I fix this, I fix that. And he expressed interest right then and there that he enjoys living there.
Yeah.
We went in with the premise that I was taking a look at the property to potentially buy it. We were just straightforward with the guy.
Yeah.
And property management walked me around the property. The complex itself looked nice. It was well maintained, and specifically the area that I was at was particularly well maintained. So overall, I was in and out of that building in like 15, 20 minutes. Everything looked good.
And property condition inside remodeled or kind of like rental quality. When we say kind of rental quality, it's not obviously a property in distress. It's not like a hoarder house, but like you said, at least it was clean.
Yeah.
But outdated, little bit of updates. How was it on the inside?
It was clean. The tenant had put like a padding on the ground to try to make less noise. I guess there had been a noise complaint at one point, and the guy was like just really not wanting to have to pay another noise complaint.
Yeah.
And like the inside was it looked like it had been turned for a rental 6 years ago, but well maintained.
Yeah.
So I didn't see any like messed up cabinets. There were no issues. There was no mold. It looked just like a normal house. It looked like, okay, carpet, paint, flooring, and some granite, and this could be a quick flip, right?
Yeah. And a little bit of a different appointment, right? Because the seller is not there.
No, seller
right?
was not there.
So really there's no rapport building that's going into, the seller in person there. You're really just fact finding and getting a, A to Z of property condition to take back and run your numbers.
That's right. So, at the end of that appointment, I said to myself, there's got to be a way to monetize this. I said, I've got a seller who doesn't want the property. It's in good shape with a paying tenant. It's under rent. That was a big concern. Rent in that area should be higher than $1,000, and he was paying $700.
Oh, crap.
But I looked at it, I just said, there's got to be a way to make this work, right? And so what ended up happening was I went back to the office, and I started running comps. And I noticed, and again, your network is your net worth. I noticed that an old coworker of ours, Ty, the real estate guy, he had helped a couple clients buy and sell. And they appeared to be investment purchases.
In the same HOA.
In the same HOA, because they didn't have the same mailing address. They had a separate mailing address, so it's not their primary residence. So I called Ty and I said, Ty, what's up with like these condos on Huntington? Are these things like a sweet deal or what? And he goes, well, I think they're pretty good. Why? Do you have one? He knows that I'm an investor. And I said, well, I don't have one per se, but I'm looking at one. Like, do you have clients who would be interested in more if I found it or if I locked it up? And he said, yeah, just, it'd have to be the right price. So I had seen that Ty's people had paid, somewhere in the 130, 125 range. And I said to myself, we've got to be less than that. So I went back to the seller, and this is where having options worked. And I called her and I said, there's a couple options you can go through. I said, one, I can list this condo for you around 125 or 130 and put it on the market, have buyers walk through the property, and potentially help you sell it that way. I'll charge you 5%. You'll pay your half a closing cost or maybe some repairs, but that's first and foremost one of your options. Two, if you want the easy button, I'll pay you cash. I'll pay you right around $100,000. And if you're willing to take $100,000, I will buy this property and I will have the tenant move out, and I'm going to probably fix and flip it. And I said, item number 3 or option number 3 would be something kind of in the middle. And I said, if there was a way for me to pay more than $100,000, it would be me going and finding a partner who's willing to pay me more than the price that you and I agreed to, and I'd cover my cost that way. And she said, well, what does that even look like? And it's funny because this is where talking before you necessarily know what you know, I wasn't fully sure of what the details looked like on an options contract. I had seen it before. I knew about it, but I said, because your husband's an attorney, I feel like you can make a smart decision and I don't have to worry about you feeling misled. And I said, if I were to buy this property from you for example, $115,000, I said the only way I could make that work is if I leveraged my time and network to go find somebody who would pay me $120,000 and cover all the same terms for you, but then pay me $5,000 as a finder's fee. And she was like, well, why don't you do that? And I was like, why wouldn't I? And I think I said that out loud. I said, well, I don't know. Why wouldn't I? And I was talking with her and she said, well, my husband's an attorney. I'll just have them review the contract. If we're comfortable with it, we'll do it. And I kind of was like, oh, damn, that was way easier than I thought. So freeze. I didn't know how an actual options contract worked. I had one in my Google Drive, but I had never signed one. So I didn't want to say anything that was wrong to somebody who was actually considering the deal. So I told her, let's freeze. Let me get an update on how this whole system works, and I'll call you back tomorrow. 2, I had to then figure out what a price I think I could get another investor to pay and kind of reverse engineer from there. And then 3, I had to then draft up the offer in a way that made sense to the attorney, because the contract I had, thanks Adam, you're a homie again, was still a little bit too casual. There were too many like loose ends. So
especially for an attorney who's looking at it who
likes
might
to redline
holes. Yeah, exactly.
So we had to tighten up the contract a little bit and make sure that everything was spelled out, like what would happen if I failed to perform X, Y, and Z. Once I had done those 3 things, kind of talked to Adam about how it works, tightened up the contract, and came up with a price point, I then called her back and presented this option. So I wanted to put that caveat, because I didn't just like talk out of my ass on the phone with the seller the first time I thought about doing this. So then the conversation went like this. I said, Mrs. Seller, ideally, I'd like to buy this for the lowest price possible. And as long as you're aware that I'm not listing this home for you, I am acting as a buyer myself, I would like to further the conversation. And I said, I think realistically, if you listed this, you'd get somewhere in that 125, 130 price point. And so I have no reason to believe that without using the MLS that I could possibly sell it for more. I'm a great salesperson. I work very hard, but I am not able to just get people to overpay.
Yeah.
And I said, knowing that number, where would you be comfortable with me buying this house from you? And she said 115. And I think the reason she said 115 was because I spitballed that number the day before, not thinking anything of it.
Yeah.
So I kind of dug my heels in on accident. I pushed pretty hard to try to get 110. I never ended up getting it. And I said, you know what? Since it's the first time I've ever done this options contract thing, let me just do 115. And if I can cover my costs and you get a number you're happy with, I think this is a great win. And she goes, well, what if you sell it for 155? Because she had seen a comp that sold for 155. And I said, honestly, Mrs. Seller, if I sell it for 155, I'm going to go take my wife and I out to a nice steak dinner because I managed to sell this for way more than it's worth. I said, more than likely, I'm going to have a buyer between 120 and 125, and I'm going to make between $5,000 and $10,000 that I'm just going to take home as if I kind of like flipped the house to the next buyer. And she said, I think that's fair. And I said, okay. And she did the classic, if you get more, will you split it with me? And I just set the expectation like, no, I'm taking on risk. No.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the pricing conversation happened for what price we took.
Now, and rewind a little bit and correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I haven't done an options contract deal, but I've briefly looked through the one that we've got, that we did get from Adam. When you're presenting an options contract, it's different than a normal purchase contract in the sense that the options contract essentially gives you the right to buy the property for an X period of time, right? Like you didn't open escrow at this point. You didn't put in an EMD, right? Can you, so
let's talk to it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you really haven't done this before. So this is a learning for you. And it's kind of cool that you can ask genuine questions. So an options contract, and this is how I explained it to her. An options contract is securing my right to buy the home for that price. I'm not making a commitment that I actually will buy it, but for the next 30 days, you're giving me the right to buy it without having to compete. I also can market the home and find somebody else. Just like in a purchase contract, once she agrees to this, she can't go sell it out from under me to somebody else that I maybe found. So if I went and I find you and you say, I'll pay you $135, but then you decide that relationships mean nothing and I'm going to call the seller can't take your $135 until I fail to perform within my 30 days. So the benefit of an options contract is a couple things. For the seller, technically, no escrow's open. So she doesn't have to worry about, some big headache if I can't perform because I'm trying to pay her more than I think I should.
Yeah.
2, she doesn't have to deal with showings. Right in my contract, it says no showings. 0. Nobody will walk the property until an earnest money is in escrow. 3, the seller doesn't have to market the home at all, right? So she doesn't have to worry about signing any paperwork outside of the options contract. There's no listing fees. There's no headache there. So to her, not having to worry about a realtor calling her 100 times was a big benefit for her.
Yeah.
So the way I phrased it is I said, well, Mrs. Seller, if you sign the options contract, I'm securing the right to market the home for 30 days without competition. And if I bring a buyer, then we'll sign a purchase agreement. Otherwise, if at 30 days I have not brought you a buyer, you and I will have a conversation and you can either extend it or cancel it. And it's easy because there's no money involved. There's no escrow opened. It's literally like a handshake deal.
Yeah.
In some ways, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I said, I'll give you 115 if you give me 30 days to market the property. And then I have 30 days to find the buyer and 15 days once I found the buyer to close the deal. So I have a total of 45 days kind of tying up the property.
Yeah.
But I don't have to put in an earnest money deposit. I don't have to open escrow. I don't have to do any of that. So my risk is 0. Her headache is 0. And we're both mutually agreeable on price. So that's where the win-win came in. Any other route would have required more headache for her if I were to not perform, and also more headache for her tenant, which she really cared about. I mean, for you know, all the deals that I've done, this person cared more about her tenant than anybody else I've talked to. So like her saying, I don't want my tenant to be bothered, I wanted to take that super seriously.
Yeah. So you lock it in at 115 and you're sitting here, you say, okay, I've got the right to purchase this condo for the next 30 days, to buy it at 115, and anything that I can get over that, you know, I can blast the deal, I can market the deal, I can do whatever I need. Anything I get over that is going to be essentially your, like you said, finder's fee, assignment fee, wholesale fee, however you want to, you know, chop it up. But you're sitting there and your next step is, okay, now I've got to go find a buyer. Right?
And again, I have to explain this because people listening might think that there was funny business. I had to explain it more than 10 different times that I am not your realtor. She understood from the first time.
You are not acting as a fiduciary for the seller.
I made sure she knew that her price is locked and that all the work I'm going to do is just to make me money. She made her money by negotiating with me, which frankly, I think she did a good job at. I mean, I definitely paid the most I could afford to pay.
Yeah.
Regardless, she understood that I was going to go look for buyers so that I could make a check. And so just to clarify, that all was disclosed. It was signed on. Her husband was aware. Everybody was on the same page.
Perfect.
So what I did was I said to myself, I know somebody that I trust who's bought a few of these or helped people buy it. Why don't I call him first? So I called Ty and I said, Ty, that house or that condo that we talked about, I tied it up. And he said, okay, send me the info. So I sent him the unit, address, number, photos, video, everything I had about it, all the info I had, right, about the property, tenant numbers, estoppels, everything. He looked it over and was like, I'm interested. And I was like, okay, like, are you interested or your buyer? And he's like, no, I'm interested. I own one in this exact building in the community. And I was like, no freaking way. So I was like, think about that. It's a guy I trust who's a realtor, so I know that he knows what he's doing, and who owns something in the building already. I was like, that is a sweet freaking deal.
Yeah.
Didn't stop me from still sending it out and seeing if I got any other offers, because I know Ty is a smart investor, so he's not going to pay the highest price. So I just sent it out, and I didn't get a ton of traction, again, because condos are not super desirable.
Yeah.
But Ty calls me a day later and goes, look, dude, I'm ready to go. Like, 125, pay me a commission. It's a done deal. And I was like, I don't know, dude. A commission on top of that, like we're jamming it pretty tight. Somebody else had come in at 128 with no commission, but there was somebody that, you know, you and I both kind of know tangentially, and we weren't so sure that they were as solid as Ty was. And I just, you know, I shot straight with Ty and I said, like, I need to be at 125 as is, no commissions, but I would like to work with you.
Yeah.
And I think he could tell that I wasn't trying to like bid him up or cause problems. I had a certain number I wanted to make. And after a couple days going back and forth, he reviewed the photos, video, everything, and he was able to make that number work. So we opened escrow. I mean, at that point, sorry, I got a call. At that point, it was pretty simple. The way that it worked was I called the seller. This was like 3 days into having the option, right? She thinks I'm going to take like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Like 3 days into it, I call her and I say, hey, this is seller. I found a partner. He's ready to go. And she was like, well, how much did you make? And I knew that that was going to come up. And because I had really good rapport with her and because I had told her that what I thought was going to happen. I was like, I mean, I'm at 125. I'm making 10 grand. That's where I'm at. And she's like, good for you. I think that's a fair number. And she was like, send over the purchase agreement. Like, how soon can we close? So during that time, Ty and I signed a purchase agreement. So what happened was, actually clarify, I signed a purchase agreement with the seller.
Okay, so then, that's what I was going to ask. So now that you've got Ty lined up, you whip out our normal purchase agreement that
the normal
we use.
One.
Okay.
I type it up like this. I put purchase price of $115, closing in 15 days or sooner.
Yep.
Actually, I put 30 days or sooner because I got permission. I said, hey, I signed this so quickly. Can I have 30 days to close it? She said, I don't care. I said, okay, earnest money is going to go in today, and we're going to start pulling the prelim. We're going to open escrow, and we're going to get the HOA documents.
Yep.
Well,
has you listed as the buyer?
Yeah, I had me listed as the
contract.
Buyer.
Yep.
Well, she goes, okay, I have like a really hard time with this HOA, so I really don't want to deal with them, but like I'll go in there and try to make sure there's a zero balance and everything's good. I said, okay. By the time I hang up the phone with her, I call Ty, and Ty goes, I don't need the HOA documents. I just want to close. So I said, okay, let's just get you in the house and close. So I signed this assignment agreement with Ty.
Perfect.
For the $125, making $10,000 as an assignment fee. Ty already knew my numbers. Like, I just was honest with him. And Ty was like, hey, I'm good for it. Like, let's go. So Ty goes and walks the property with the property management company. We had signed on a Friday. He walked it on a Tuesday. He met the tenant, saw the unit. He left. He said, I'm good. Like, as long as the HOA is up to date and everybody's good, like, I'm ready to go.
He's ready.
So called the seller. Seller went back and forth with the HOA for a little bit, the management company, and like had a really hard time just getting them to give her a piece of paper that showed a zero balance.
Yeah.
I guess that company is just, their communication was really bad. There was a lot of issues. Ty knew the company because he owned property in there. Ty said it's not as hard as she was having, so maybe there was a personal disconnect.
Yeah.
But once we had that zero, like, escrow pulled the prelim, came up clean. Everything cleared for title. Ty put in his money, and I believe like 14 days later we closed.
Bingo.
And Ty got an off-market deal cheaper than the others, and the seller got out of a house for a much higher price than she originally thought she would.
Yeah,
and I
originally
made a spread
that you thought you would be able to make in the first place. Because I mean, looking at that, I think the options contract was a way better way to go. One, and it always falls down to having that open and honest communication with the seller, right? Like you said, it was repeated 10, 20 times. The seller knew how this was going to work and how it was going to go down. And I think when you're kind of on the fence like that, like a price, like when you're going, dude, market value on market stuff selling for 130, how in the world am I going to sign and open escrow and put in an EMD at 115? It just, on the surface, that doesn't really make much sense, right? But you were able to use the options contract, find the perfect buyer in Ty,
a super niche
awesome,
buyer,
and get it assigned and make a good 10 grand.
And by the way, Ty was extremely happy about this purchase because I find out later, Ty has been buying these units, fixing them up, and then using them for traveling nurses and making a crap ton of money
right by the hospital
because it's next to the hospital. It's a nice community in that area. That's pretty rare, and it's gated and safe. So Ty was pumped because Ty's making way more than the 1% rule, and he has a unit that's not going to be super hard to turn.
Yeah.
So, I mean, overall, again, this is a tool in the tool belt.
Yeah.
Instead of giving her, you have to list it or you have to sell it to me for cheap, both of which didn't make sense. One was too much of a headache and a hassle, and the other was too cheap. I kind of was able to, and we always say don't do this, but I was kind of able to split the middle and come up with one that gave her both a little bit more money, but still retained the little headache. The only downside to it is that she had no guarantee that once we had talked and agreed on a number, that it was actually going to close until I found that final buyer.
Yeah.
So she had to be patient with me, which was cool. And at the end of the day, like, she was like, this was the easiest deal ever. Of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who have called me, you're the first person who ever actually made me an offer.
Yeah.
And then, you know, she, on top of it, she was like, I didn't expect you to actually find a buyer. And she was like, I also didn't actually expect you to close the deal. So she's like, I'm just pumped that this all worked out, because I really didn't think that anybody was going to want to buy this thing, because I hate this HOA so damn much. And I'm like, well, the buyer already has units in the HOA. Like, he already knew about all the problems. So one person's headache is another person's money-making opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude, I think the biggest opportunity I see here with people who have leads in their pipeline, or maybe having leads coming in either from inbound or outbound marketing, is I feel like this situation happens a lot. You've got a seller who, you know, maybe hits one or some of the pillars of motivation, right? But they're not in distress. They don't need to sell for their livelihood, right? They don't need this money to move and to use it for something else, which some of the sellers that we work with do, right? But that kind of puts us in a tough position, because, you know, they may be a little more, you know, strict on their price. They don't need to sell. They may have a couple pillars, but they want more money than we initially on the surface can pay.
Yeah.
And I think, like you had mentioned earlier, I think it's really important to, you know, reevaluate these situations and put another, you know, have this tool in your tool belt to present another option to the seller, where a lead may have gone, you know, straight to the trash, or archived, or glanced over, is now a money-making opportunity for more people and more conversations and more leads.
And let's talk through expectations too. So you got to think about this. This is a condo deal. Not many investors want condos.
Yeah.
So I set the expectation with the seller, like, look, I'm going to try to get you this price, but there's not even a guarantee I'm going to. I don't want her thinking that I'm making a promise that I can't make, right? You and I have this, which is like, we don't want to ever price reduce. We don't want to ever mislead a seller to think that we're going to do something and then later have to back away from our word. So to me, dealing with the upfront uncertainty was much easier, and saying, I don't even know if I can pay you $115, but if I could, here's how I would do it. And if you're willing to let me try, I'll try.
Yeah.
And the other part to it is, if you have a really hard time running numbers, just on top of, like, if your seller is hard stuck on a price, right? So if you have a single family home in Fresno, your number is 170 and they're at 190, and you're a wholesaler, you don't know if you can pay 190, an options contract might be the way to go, because you can then say, look, I'm going to see if I can make it work. You can blast it out. And if you don't get offers, you can say, hey, I can't make that work. Mm-hmm. But if you have a niche product and you say to yourself, I don't even know who's going to buy this, but you have it at what you think is a pretty good deal, still doing the options contract and saying, hey, I want to just set this up with an options contract so I can go make sure that I can actually get funding for this deal, or I can actually get a partner to help me with this deal. You're setting the right expectation with the seller.
Yeah.
Like, the reason why investors look so scummy in the world is because there's a lot of investors who mislead people and say they're going to do one thing and then do another. This is a way of being, like what you said at the start, extremely upfront and honest about what your capabilities are. And if you're making an offer that your numbers say you shouldn't make, you should be clear about that.
Yeah.
So let's role play this conversation. Do you want to?
Yeah.
So can you be the seller?
Yep.
I'll be the buyer. And again, I apologize for the people on the podcast. I've been looking at my watch because I'm waiting on a call from a doctor's office. So if I look distracted, that's why. You'll be the seller. I'll be the caller. Let's talk through a deal for a single family home, and you're going to be hard stuck at a number, and I'm going to be about 20 grand less.
Okay.
All right.
Let's do it.
Ring, ring.
Hello.
Hey, Cade. It's Scott Farrow again. Is this a bad time?
Oh, no. Hey, what's going on, Scott? No, now's a perfect time.
Okay, perfect. Hey, I wanted to follow up on our conversation after I had the opportunity to run my numbers and kind of come up with the options that we had talked about. Is this, do you have about 15 minutes to talk?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Let's hear them.
So let's just start from the beginning. You've got this house. Obviously, it needs some work. The tenant is moving out. It sounds like you're not in the business of wanting to rent this out anymore. I could give you a couple options, but I don't want you to feel like these are the only options you have. And I want to start the conversation.
Okay.
So I called you because I want to buy this thing cash. After running my numbers, I know that you said that you want to be at 200,000. After we walked it, is there any price under 200,000 that you'd even consider after you were able to see the condition of the home?
No, I mean, honestly, Scott, I'm pretty, anything less than that 200,000. I mean, I'd be losing money. I'd be throwing money away. And I know, I know you're an investor and 200's really that number. And if I can't get that number, I mean, really my only other option is to kind of rent it out, even though I really don't want to.
Okay. You really don't want to? Okay. Well, look, I totally get it. And I kind of assumed based on our conversation yesterday that you weren't going to budge off that 200 number. If I'm being honest with you, when I ran my numbers, I truly believe, based on what I'm seeing with the amount of work that's needed for the roof, the flooring, the kitchen, the HVAC, I mean, this thing needs a whole remodel. Truly the highest price I can afford to pay is $180,000. If that's not a number you'd consider, I have another option, which would be listing the house. Based on what I'm seeing on the MLS, which, I mean, you and I already talked, I'm a licensed agent. I think I could probably sell this on the open market to an investor somewhere around like the 220 price point. But after paying commissions and fees and everything, you're probably only going to be right around that the 205 range.
I mean, you seem like a good guy, Scott. I know you're an investor and an agent, but I really don't like agents, to be honest with you either. So, I don't want to go through another listing.
Hey, look, I get it. I hear that a lot. And especially when you have somebody call you about a direct sale, you don't really want to have the listing conversation. The last thing that I could think about, Cade, and I don't even know if you'd consider this, but because you're a more sophisticated seller than some, and it sounds like you've owned more than a few properties, there's a new type of option contract, is what it's called, that I use when I have to try to pay more than I know I should, but I'm really trying to make the deal work. And here's how that works. If I paid you $200,000 or even committed to it, I would have to go find a partner who can afford to pay me more. The way that would look for you would be we'd come to an agreement such as $200,000. And then I would go and try to find a partner who's also an investor, but who may be willing to pay more. And I would take the money from the guy paying more. So if he paid $210,000, I would take the difference. You would only make the $200,000, but you'd sell it as is. You would not have to pay any buyers, closing costs, or agent fees. You would just get your $200,000, and I would take the difference. Now, you're probably thinking, what happens if I sell it for $220,000? I would make $20,000. Okay, so my risk is that I'm paying more than I would like. Your risk is that you've capped exactly how much you can make. Does that even sound like something you'd consider?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't want my time wasted, and I know, you're not in the business of wasting anybody's time. So, I mean, if there's any way you can chop it up and make that 200 number work, I don't really care how we do it, as long as I get 200,000 cash as is. I mean, that's really what I need.
That is perfect. And I'm glad that you and I are on the same page. I want to, set something straight here. I am a licensed agent. I'm not planning on listing this home or working your capacity in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that later you don't ever feel like I misled you there. Second off, I like that you said you don't want to waste your time or mine. The best part about this option contract is that I'm not even going to tie up the property in escrow. All that I am doing is reserving the right to buy the property. Now, that being said, I'm going to go do a bunch of legwork. So the contract does make it exclusive where in that 30-day period, you can't go sell it to somebody else for a different price. So if somebody came and offered you $1 million cash, you couldn't take it unless I failed to perform in my 30-day period to buy the home, okay? So during that 30 days, if somebody contacts you and offers you more, you'd have to wait, and you can't cancel on me. Do you understand?
Yeah, got it.
Okay. Now, the next step is simple. I'm going to email you the options contract. I'm going to fill it in with the terms that I would like. The term that you're getting is the $200,000. The term that I'm looking for is 30 days to get a buyer, and then 15 days after to get a close on the escrow. So a total of 45 days. Okay. In that time, I'm going to put $0 into escrow. I'm not even going to contact my escrow company until I find a buyer. If I don't find a buyer, I walk away scot-free and I resign my interest in buying your home, and you can sell it to anybody you like. But if I do find the buyer, then we'll move forward and there's no negotiation. So if I find a buyer, I'm not going to be raising the price on you. Even if they paid me $1 million, the price is $200,000 for you. Okay?
Got it.
As long as you're aware of that, I'm going to send the contract over, and it will have an opportunity for you to DocuSign.
Perfect.
If you have any questions, give me a call. I want to make sure you and I are on the same page before we make any signatures.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll probably, if you want to email it over, I'll probably take a look after work, and if you're free, I'll probably call you. So as I'm going through it, you can kind of walk me through it as well before I sign.
Okay, fantastic. Before I let you go, I just want to confirm, you don't want to list this house and you don't want to take the 170 cash deal.
No. No, I need that too. I need that 200. Like I said, if no ifs, ands, or buts about it, no matter how we go about it, as long as I get my 200 cash, that's my number. And as long as we can get that done, I'd be happy.
Okay. Well, Cade, I'm going to send that over. We'll talk later today.
Sounds good. Thanks, Scott.
All right. Bye. See how simple that is? Because you're able to lead with what my cash offer is, which is always going to be disappointing because you have to be conservative when you're buying. I also explain, hey, if you want to shoot for the stars, here's that road, and it's listing it. You'll always make more that way, but you might have headache. And then finally, you type back into the middle. Look, there is another option, but you need to understand that it's not guaranteed. And you also have to understand that you have set a cap on how much you will make, but you've also set a bottom on how much you're going to make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, dude, I think this is really freaking awesome. I mean, already a deal closed from using an options contract. I know you've continued, and I've even thrown it out there a couple times that it's another tool in our tool belt that we're going to continue using. So again, not to sound like a broken record, but shout out Adam Abajian for first bringing this to our attention. And I think especially, dude, with the changing market, people who may have, been struggling with their business and not having as much, deal flow or cash flow or deals as maybe, the past couple months or the past couple years. I think this is a very nice way to bridge that gap. And again, as long as you are open and honest from the very beginning, I think this is going to be a really effective tool to put in your tool belt and use when you're talking with sellers.
Absolutely. The open and honest part is key. There are a million ways to make money lying to people. If you lie to people, you will get caught. So don't say that you're doing anything other than what I just explained. The only other option, I think, to clarify too, is if you're using hard money, you can also say, hey, I'm planning on buying it. I need to talk to my hard money guy or my lender to make sure that they're going to approve it.
Yeah.
But if you are not planning on flipping this thing, do not freaking lie about it, because sellers are way smarter than you think. If you are a new guy, who most of our podcast listeners are, be honest, explain what you're doing. I promise you, you will get more returning business from that than if you were to lie. And then I swear every time you lie, you will get caught.
Yeah, 100%. Well, dude, everybody who is out there listening, if you guys need a copy of the options contract, if you guys have any questions about this deal, or really, I think we did a really, really good practice call. But if you guys ever want to run through, a scenario, how to pitch it, before you have that conversation with the seller, hit us up. We are always readily available to help out. And again, before we wrap up, I'll shout out that we do both, from episode 100, we do both have the GoFundMe link in both of our Instagram handles. That's in the podcast Instagram handle as well. We really appreciate all of your guys' support with Olive Madera and helping provide support to sex trafficking victims here in the Central Valley. So thank you guys.
Have a great rest of your day. We will see you guys next week for episode 102.
Boom.